Catherine, you don't mind at all.
It wouldn't even matter. All right, gather around and get in a little closer so you can hear when the spirit doesn't talk about. Welcome to historic St. Paul's Church, the site where Augusta's history began almost 275 years ago. This building is the 5th church building, but the first building was made of logs and it had a fort around it. For many years, this graveyard was the burial ground for all residents who lived within the town limits of Augusta of every race and creed. Until August the 1st, 1818, when this cemetery closed and 2 new city cemeteries were built southeast of here, Magnolia and Cedar Grove cemeteries. Now, I've used 2 different terms for burial ground, cemetery and graveyard. Who knows the difference? I know somebody does.
A graveyard is in a church.
A graveyard is at a church, and a cemetery is not near a church. Very good. I don't have a prize for you, but
That's pretty interesting.
yes. So we're very fortunate today that we have convinced some of the spirits to come out of the graves to share their histories with you. Now that took some doing because they're a little shy about coming out in the daylight hours. So let's go look for some spirits. Oh, look, there's the first spirit right here. All gather around. Can you spread out a little bit and get on the grass so you can hear over the stars? Hannah Anderson. Good afternoon. This is a lovely group. They're dying to hear your story.
Oh, okay. Could one of you lovely people tell me what year it is? Oh my, 2023. I stayed in Augusta much longer than I intended. You see, I never actually lived here. I only died here. My story begins in Philadelphia in 1753. The year that I turned 23. It was quite the year. You do know what happened in Philadelphia in July of 1776. Signing of the Declaration of Independence. Well, all of this talk of independence and freedom, well, it made me think of my own life. You see, I didn't want to be bound by convention. Women of my era were expected to be married by a certain age, and well, I just wasn't going to have a part of that. The year that I turned 31, I moved to Charleston, South Carolina. Until then, 1783, it was known as Charlestown. That was the year that it was incorporated. I met a man by the name of Robert Anderson. He owned a dry goods store. And the year that I turned 37, he and I wed. We were only married about 10 years before he passed away. He left me with 2 small children, Elizabeth, who was 8, and Robert, who was 6 at the time of Robert Sr.'s death. And he left me the dry goods store. And that spirit of independence that I had developed in my life came into play once again. I raised my children, and my daughter married a man by the name of Adam Hutchison, and they moved to Augusta. And in 1814, I did tell you that I was a woman before my time, I decided to visit my daughter in Augusta. However, before I left Charleston, I changed my will, and I left everything to my daughter instead of my son. We had a short visit, and while I was here, I passed away on September 30th of 1814. I'm buried right over there, kind of next to the church. You can see the lovely flowers that are there.
Yellow.
Yellow flowers. Did you plant those things? Oh, thank you so much. I hear from the spirit that one of my customers was a relative of yours.
Really?
Macaulay Wright?
Yeah, that's my 4th great grandfather.
Oh, he was such a wonderful man. And his first wife, Jane. What a beautiful lady. His second wife, however. Oh, well, Florence?
Yes?
Oh, she was quite something.
Do that.
Well, she racked up a bill in my store and owed me $14 when I passed away. Yes, I do hope that my daughter took care of it. Now, I have another spirit for you to introduce you to, and he also has a tie to Philadelphia. His name is Col William Few, and if you'll follow me, Colonel Few.
Follow me inside. Well, welcome. I'm Colonel William Few. I was born in 1748 on Tobacco Plantation outside of Baltimore, Maryland. My father was a Quaker, my mother was a Catholic. At age 10, my father had 3 crop failures in a row. And he decided that the best thing for us to do is leave Maryland and head to North Carolina to see if tobacco would grow better in North Carolina. We moved down to Hillsborough, North Carolina, and for the first time in my life, I got to go to school. I got to learn how to read. I became fascinated with reading, and it became the love of my life, and I decided to become a lawyer. At the same time, my family became disillusioned by British rule. My brother James became a captain in the regulatory movement, a rebellion against the British control. He was captured by the British, and Governor Tryon used him as an example. He was hung without a trial. That was an event in my life that set forth where I was heading. I decided to fight against the crown and also to support the new government in these colonies. So I immediately went into military training in North Carolina, and then followed my family down here to Georgia, ultimately here to Augusta, where I got involved in the local militia, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel. At the same time, I got involved in politics, and both in the fledgling state and also in this new union. I was elected to the Georgia Assembly and also elected to the Continental Congress. But more importantly, and more significantly, I got appointed at age 39 to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. I was one of only 2 signers representing the state of Georgia, myself and Abraham Baldwin, founder of the University of Georgia. Being part of that, of the signing and creation of the U.S. Constitution was a very, very big event in my life. The U.S. Constitution was the foundation for our federal government. It was also, more importantly, the framework for future democracies in the world. Now, while I was in Philadelphia, a very attractive lady caught my eye. Now, she was an old spinster, 24 years old, but she was 16 years my younger and pretty spry. But more importantly, she was the daughter of a wealthy Commodore of the Navy, James Nicholson. So Catherine Nicholson and I fell in love. Now, she being a spinster, she had 2 things she wanted. She wanted marriage, and she wanted children. So we immediately got married in Manhattan in 1788. The finest New York was in. And after the wedding, we moved down to Augusta. And here, I got busy again in politics. I became one of the first 2 U.S. senators, and also a federal judge in one of the local circuits, and a trustee at the University of Georgia. My wife also was very busy, having 3 daughters. She had Frances, Mary, and Matilda. But more importantly, she had my pride and joy, my son Alan. Now, during those years, she became homesick. And by 1799, I decided to move the family back to New York. And there I got involved in politics again. I was on the New York Assembly 4 years in a row. And then I got involved in commerce. I was director of the Manhattan Bank. And as you can see in my portrait here, president of Citibank. In 1810, I was devastated by the death of my son Adam at the age of 13. I never overcame that grief. And in 1828, while visiting my daughter up in Beacon, New York, I died. At the time of my death, I was only one of two of the signers of the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution, and the other one was James Madison. At my death, I was buried at the local church in Beacon. Y'all join me outside. As I stated inside, I died in 1828 at my daughter Francis's home in Beacon. I was buried there at the local church. Now my wife was fairly consistent. She wasn't buried next to me. She was actually buried in Manhattan at Trinity Church at the family plot. Wanted to be here with it. Now, as you can see, I was not left resting in peace. Without my permission, they dug me up in 1973 as part of the bicentennial celebration. I'm buried right behind you at that cross in the middle of the cemetery, one of the graveyard. And it's nice to be back here in Georgia. But my departing words with y'all. There's not many years between where you are and where I am. Live life to the fullest. Cherish your family. And serve your community well. Thank you. Let's go see another spirit.
Aye, aye. Here before you, gather round. Here before you lies a story. A story of wealth, tragedy, and comedy. First the wealth, yes? My name is Maj Alexander Blair, and I came to this country shortly after the Revolutionary War. I came from a village in Scotland known as Stirling, and I came to Granby. Granby is located just 3 miles downstream. I mean, is he having a contest to see how long he can blow the whistle? Hey, I'd rather wet the whistle than blow it. I digress. But it must be some bad spirits. Bear with me. We'll be gone in a moment. Aye. That concludes the tour. So Granby is just 3 miles downriver from Columbia. However, it's no longer there, as I told you, before the witch with the what have you came. I eventually... Hello! Hi! I eventually made my way to Augusta and quickly amassed a fortune as a merchant, planter, and military officer. In fact, I own 3,600 acres of land along the Savannah, Ogeechee, and Altamaha rivers. And I own town lots all across the state. However, it was here in Augusta that I met and married my beloved Elizabeth McKinney. Next, the tragedy, no? Eliza and I had 3 sons, all of whom died in childhood. Ah, save your tears, lass. It gets worse. It gets worse. I myself died in what was only my 36th year of life. However, I left Eliza with child. And that child was born 22nd March, 1805. Forthwith, the comedy.
My name is Janet Stuart Blair, and when my father died, his brothers came all the way from Scotland to Augusta to claim his wealth, only to find out that I, the heir of my father's fortune, had just become the wealthiest baby in Augusta. When I was 19, I married William Montgomery, and we had 9 beautiful children. Unfortunately, 3 of them had died at birth. We lived in Spring Hill Plantation, just south of town. And when William died, I moved back up into town, and I lived in Judge Warren's house, which I now hear from some younger spirits is called Appleby Library. I unfortunately died just 8 years after my mother.
Aye, speaking of my beloved Eliza, when I died, she married the widower, James Gardner. They had 11 children. So it was a different time, lass. It's a different time. Two of whom died. They eventually settled just down the way on Telfair Street. And some of my younger spirit friends tell me that their house came to be known as the Gertrude Herbert House. In fact, when James died, Eliza reared 7 of her grandchildren, orphaned by the death of her daughter Mary. She herself died 1872. Well, there you have our story, our family. You laughed a little, you cried a little, but in the end, you were glad I left my fortune to Janet.
I know I was.
Come, we've got another spirit or two to see. Aye.
John Beale Bond. How I came to lie beneath the stone next to you is an interesting story, although regretfully brief one. See, I was born in 1779 on the Chesapeake Bay, in the rich tobacco country of Charles County, Maryland. My mother passed away when I was a young man, and my father's death in 1797, by Maryland law, I should have inherited the entirety of my mother's family estate called Durham. My father didn't believe that was fair or just for my sisters, so he divided it between us, Kitty, Molly, and myself. Young man of 18, I really had no interest in going into business with those 2 girls, so I sold them my portion, and I moved here to Augusta on the banks of the Savannah. When I got here, I met a beautiful girl named Mary Ann Hammond, just over the river. Now, Mary Ann had also lost her father when she was only 10 years old. You see, Mr. John Hammond had been murdered. He had been party to a lawsuit with another prominent Augusta citizen. Now, one evening he was shot dead at their place in Edgefield. Those men were never apprehended. We suspect they may have been associates with the other party of that dispute, Mr. Ezekiel Harris. It's enough conjecture, I believe. The truth is, Mary Ann and I had a wonderful life here in Augusta. We had 2 beautiful girls. We welcomed our firstborn Elizabeth in 1811, and her sister joined her in 1814 for Mary Catherine. I was a planter by trade and brokered many deals in Augusta, from land contracts, horses, cattle. I was a Presbyterian. It's not the William Bell Fool. Presbyterian, as I said, and I met many like-minded Calvinists here. We actually formed a congregation in these buildings in 1804, led by my friend, the Reverend Washington McKnight, who rests just with me over here. We met here at these buildings for several years until the trustees of the Academy of Richmond County decided that it was time to return these buildings to the Episcopal Parish of St. Paul. I, along with 6 others, obtained a charter from the governor to form a new church we called Christ Church. We laid a cornerstone in 1809 on Telfair Street, and it was known as the first Presbyterian church. That building was completed in 1812, and you, I believe, can still find it standing there today. I also dabbled in politics. I was a member of the Augusta City Council, and my fellow councilman elected me in 1807 as intendant of the city, a position you may recognize as mayor. As a patron of the arts, I founded the Thespian Society and Library Company of Augusta. We raised funds to rebuild a burn theater over here on Bay Street. Well, by 1812, we were once again embroiled in another battle with our former colonial oppressors, the British. I was commissioned a brigade major in the Georgia militia, a position I proudly held until 1814. It's around that time that Mary Ann and I decided to move our family from our home in the village of Somerville out to beautiful Columbia County. A trend I'm told by some of you folks continues to this day. We built a Loa Mills on the banks of the Creek in between the Wrightsboro and Washington roads. We had two fine Georgia burrs, which are grist stones, and we manufactured the finest wheat that could be found in these parts. By then it had become 1815. And on a November morning, on a day kind of like this, Monday, I took a stroll on the piazza of our new home at Lower Mills, and according to the Augusta Herald, I suffered an apoplectic fit. In 3 minutes was the corpse. On Tuesday, they brought my body here, where I was buried with full military honors. Sadly, I would never see my little girls grow up to have beautiful daughters of their own. They did. And it is my fervent prayer that one day I might be remembered here in my adopted home. Folks, if you follow me this way and do watch your step, you know St. Paul's Churchyard is home to many fine military men. George Steptoe Washington, nephew of our first president. Before he passed away of consumption in Augusta in 1809, he served as executor of his uncle's estate. And my good friend Washington McKnight, the first pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, died at the age of 26 and rests just here. And then there's the Commodore Bowen.
Major,
Oliver.
so good to see you, my dear friend.
It's nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Look at this crowd you've got.
It is quite a crowd, but I must confess being on this side of the veil tires me greatly. And I desire to go with it. So I'll bid you all good afternoon.
Go rest, my dear friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please follow me to my final resting place. Please gather around. I'm just a spirit. As you heard, my name is Commodore Oliver Bowen. I've been here since 1800, and I've seen a lot of things happen during that time period. I've seen this church go from a small frame structure to a brick building, to a fire in 1916 that damaged it severely, to this wonderful building that was rebuilt by the congregation and the city. It's a gorgeous place, and I've heard many wonderful choirs and beautiful music coming from that church over the years. I've been here ever since, and people have come and gone. They've walked past my grave, but no one's really heard my story till today. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you my story. I was born in 1742 in Providence, Rhode Island, and lived there for many years. And you're probably wondering, well, how did I end up here in Augusta? Well, when I was near 30, I decided there was more opportunity in the South. Savannah was the capital of Georgia in the late 1770s. And I decided it was that time, the early 1770s, it was that time for me to come south and try this place, this new land here in the South. So I took a boat and I came south and I landed in Savannah, and I loved that city very, very much. But a short time after I arrived, we were involved in the Revolutionary War. We're at war with the Crown across the ocean. I wanted to do everything I could to be the good patriot and help our cause. So I soon after arriving became a delegate with the Georgia Provincial Congress. Not long after that, I became a captain in the Continental Army here in a battalion, and that was a huge honor. But I have to tell you, the thing that really made an impact on me was during that time after I was a captain. You see, it was not long after that we heard of a British ship just off the coast of Georgia near Tybee Island. Well, I found a schooner, I got a crew aboard, we were heavily armored, and we went and intercepted that ship. We raised our flag of liberty, and we demanded that we were able to board that ship to see what the contents were of that vessel. Inside, in its hull, we found over 16,000 pounds of powder and over 700 pounds of lead and bullets. Now you can imagine, that had come straight from London to be used against us. In turn, ladies and gentlemen, we used it against them. We were victorious, as you well know, when it comes to that battle and that war. I received the title of Commodore of the Navy after the war, and I'm very proud of that. And in peacetime, I approached my life with the same vigor I approached during the war years. I met a wonderful young woman named Anne Fox. We married and lived quite a few years in Savannah. But eventually, we came here to Augusta. You see, from 1785 to 1795, this was the capital of Georgia. The first real capital of Georgia, as far as I was concerned. Under our patriot and liberty, this was our place to be. So we came upriver, and it wasn't long after we arrived here in Augusta that President John Adams appointed me as Marshal to the Province of Georgia. Now you can imagine, I was very proud. But sadly, a dastardly evil villain named Richard Dennis accused my department, the Marshal's Department, of extortion and wrongdoing. I could not believe the charges. We went to trial, and we were acquitted of all charges. That was not enough for me. As a gentleman, my honor had been tarnished severely. There was only one thing to do: a duel. Now, during that time period, dueling was illegal here in Georgia. So I challenged Dennis to come with me across the river into South Carolina, where we would have a duel in the sandbar. He agreed, and one summer morning at 4 o'clock, we started preparing. Now, we fired a number of volleys back and forth. On the third firing, I aimed at Dennis, cocked my pistol, and fired, and nothing happened. The powder had to have gotten wet from the humidity and the moisture in the air. It was Dennis's turn. I remember our moderator, our mediator, saying, "Are you ready, Commodore, to receive fire?" I went from facing him to the pose of this, because you posed sideways to hopefully not receive fire and directly into your body and be less of a target. He pulled the trigger, and unfortunately, his gun fired. He hit me in the hip. I fell to the ground in mortal pain, but I was told by the physician on hand that I would survive these wounds. Sadly, the physician was wrong. A few weeks later, I died of a bilirubin fever, and I've been here ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with these words of wisdom. Love your neighbors, be a patriot to your country, and always, please always keep your powder dry. I want to thank you all for coming today. Please follow me on this gorgeous evening. I'm sure there might be some more spirits that we might cross as we walk through here. It's getting that time of the day. And I would say the last time I saw you, we danced at your wedding.
We did.
Oh, my dear.
Oh,
So good to see you.
and look at all these wonderful people that you brought up.
Oh, this is just saved this last group for the best.
So glad. Listen, y'all.
Thank you all very much.
Show you my grave. About my resting place, should I say. We can come and gather around. Come on. There's plenty of room. My name is Mary Barden Nesbitt, but everybody calls me Polly, so feel free to call me Polly. Well, I was born in 1777 on my family farm right outside of Augusta. Now, you would say I was born on the frontier, because Augusta was on the westernmost part of the 13 British colonies. And I can remember, my father saying to some of our relatives, he'd say, "Well, we'll be there if the creeks don't rise." Now, he wasn't referring to bodies of water. He was referring to our neighbors, the Indians. I was just a young child, just a little girl, during the Revolutionary War. But I did know, always knew, that my family were patriots. And I also knew to be fearful of the British soldiers. Because in 1778, the British launched their Southern campaign. And they came here and they wanted to rally the loyalists to their cause. Charleston fell, then Savannah, and next Augusta.
If you would look over here, you will see a Celtic cross. This is the site of Fort Augusta. And when the British came and captured Fort Augusta, they renamed it Fort Cornwallis. Does anybody know who Cornwallis was?
British general.
The British general, yes. And it stayed that way for a whole year until a group of Georgia patriots, led by light horse Harry Lee, recaptured the fort and just drove those British out. Well, the people of Augusta were very proud of their Revolutionary War heroes, while our county, Richmond, is named after the Duke of Richmond, who was a friend of liberty and a friend for our independence. Walton Way was named for George Walton, who was one of the 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence from Georgia. And Green Street, does everybody know where that is? Green Street was named for General Nathaniel Greene, who was the commander of the forces in the South. He served under George Washington. About 3 years after the war, Augusta became the temporary capital of the new state of Georgia. And with that came government leaders and their families. Oh, our population grew. And with that came merchants. They came to seek their fortune. And one of those merchants was my future husband, Hugh Nesbitt. He immigrated from Ireland in the late 1790s. And he sold wholesale, retail goods, and even real estate. But our marriage was short-lived. I died giving birth to my son, our only child. I died at the age of 25. Now, I can tell by your faces that you are all shocked to learn that I am 25 years old. But being underground for over 200 years, let me tell you, it is no beauty treatment. Well, James followed me several weeks later. And of course, we are buried here together in what was the city cemetery. Now, Hugh, he went on to become quite successful, very prominent citizen here in Augusta. He was one of the directors at the Bank of Augusta. He also he owned quite a bit of stock in the State Bank of Georgia. Oh, he was quite a catch in that time. And he remarried in 1810. He married Eleanor O'Keefe. And in that same year, he built this beautiful home on Millage Road, 820 Millage Road. Now, it was in a new area called Somerville. Well, Mrs. O'Keefe, the second Mrs. O'Keefe, she gave Hugh 6 healthy children. Well, good for her. But let's not talk about that. Hugh died in 1828, and he's buried at Somerville Cemetery. But his family still lived in that house for the next 100 years. And I have heard from some of the gossips in this cemetery that it still stands, that home, in all of its grandeur, even today. Now, I know y'all are a nice group of people, but I have had the weirdest feeling when y'all walk this way, that there might be another spirit among us. Do you see another spirit? Because I did send out some invitations. Oh,
It's Ursula Collins.
Ursula, yes, it is so good to see you.
Thank you.
Ursula is from Cedar Grove Cemetery.
Absolutely.
Well, we're just thrilled you're here.
Thank you. And how pretty you look in your patriotic
Oh,
colors.
yes.
She's doing the spin.
Yes.
The right there.
You know, I don't dress up often.
Well, you look like you had a designer put you
Oh,
together.
thank you.
Oh my goodness.
But listen, now that you're here and we have this wonderful group, could you tell us about yourself?
Oh yes, thank you, Connie.
Would y'all like to hear her story?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, first, I must congratulate you. You are doing a fine job to preserve the unique character of Augusta. My mother, Sarah, thought Hildebrandt was just so exotic when it opened in 1879, and because it's still standing, I didn't get lost coming here on my swoosh from Cedar Grove.
And we love to swoosh.
And spin. Okay, so I lived from 1863 to 1961, 98 years. But when I was swooshing around, I saw that I was the youngest spirit at this party.
I think so.
My papa, R.J. Brown, served for 3 years as pastor at Mother Trinity C&E Church, followed by my husband, C.H. Collins. Now, Reverend Collins and I didn't have any children. However, I was a public school educator and principal for 52 years, and during my lifetime, a brand new school was built in my honor.
Quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you've heard several times. Originally, these sacred grounds were the first cemetery for the city of Augusta and Fort Augusta. Then, in 1818, something else happened. Now, my invitation, it says, the older spirits want to hear about the people of color who were at St. Paul.
Yes.
Now, there's no RSVP there.
No, but I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come.
Oh, yes, yes. And it says Mrs. Polly Nesbitt.
Yes.
So I have enjoyed your acquaintanceship for all of you.
Thank you.
It's such a long
Please
time.
do. Please tell us.
Okay. So in 1818, the Negro burials were taken to the newly built Cedar Grove Cemetery, and the white burials were taken to the newly built Magnolia Cemetery separately. Do you understand? However, there are still many fascinating connections, the people of color to St. Paul's. For example, my friend Eliza Beard was baptized here in November 1864 during General Sherman's March to the Sea. Both her parents were free people of color, and after the U.S. Civil War, Eliza's papa, Thomas P. Beard, became the first Negro to represent Richmond County in the Georgia legislature.
Oh, that was good.
Now, in the southeast corner of these grounds, there is a memorial headstone called a cenotaph. Now, in the protocol of the day, the sextons hand-delivered funeral invitations, prepared the grave sites, and registered the deceased. The first name on the cenotaph is Abel Wright. He was so highly regarded as a sexton of St. Paul's. He was also one of the charter trustees to buy the property for Mother Trinity. He passed away Christmas Day, 1887. His funeral was held here with St. Paul's full choir with all of the elite white people of the day. The second name on the cenotaph is Benjamin Whitehead. Mr. Wright, his wife Annie, and Mr. Whitehead are all buried at Cedar Grove. I'm sorry, yes, at Cedar Grove. Oh, so long. At Cedar Grove. And that's why it is a cenotaph. It means that there's nobody there. Get it? Nobody. Oh, these are some funny mortals. Would you like to hear more? Yes. Okay, come walk with me. Now, you had the opportunity to meet Senator William Few, yes? Yes. Senator Few and his wife, Catherine, we settled in New York in 1799 because they did not approve of slavery. Richard and Emily Tubman freed their enslaved people in 1836. Richard is buried under the church. Oh, nothing more to be said about that. In 1889, St. Mary's Episcopal Church became the first Negro daughter parish of St. Paul's. However, in 1890, Dr. George Stoney and his bride Rosa were married here. Oh, how I love to tell the old stories when I would walk from my home on Taylor Street to Cedar Grove. My niece, Ethel Hudson Mays, would bring along her nephew, little Willie Mays III, and we would clean the old grave sites. Now, little Willie's mother, Carrie, was so sweet, she kept my glasses with me. So on my swoosh back to Cedar Grove, I'm going to stop at Springfield Village and on 8th Street to read the historic markers there. Now, while I'm out swooshing, I would like for you to read the booklet that we have prepared for you, and please keep up the fine work you're doing in historic preservation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I've seen a lot of these faces before at Cedar Grove and Magnolia. Thank you so much.